Hi everyone, Kim here at Alla City Homestead, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the strawberry tree. Now I have done a video or two about this before. In November of 2020 I did my first strawberry tree video. That was right after I started this channel actually, and I just love strawberry trees so much. That video was an introduction to them, kind of a general overview, and an introduction to my two trees. I have an Arbutus unedo and an Arbutus marina. Then about 6 months later I did an update video, showed how the trees were growing, and also mostly concentrated on explaining some of the great things you can do with strawberry tree fruits and strawberry tree leaves, because boy, the leaves make a wonderful, extremely healthy tea. Now in today's video, of course, I'm going to give you an update on my trees, show you what they look like now. Wow, they have grown so much, especially the Arbutus marina, which started out kind of small. I'll also be giving you tips on what kind of growing conditions they like, sun, water, soil, that type of thing, if you can propagate them via seed or cuttings, and a small discussion on the varieties. I actually am going to do another video about the varieties of strawberry trees because there's a lot of confusion about it, and rightly so. It is kind of a confusing topic, but I think it's a good idea to know about the varieties before you go out and buy yourself a strawberry tree so you know what you're getting. But we'll get into a little bit of that. And then finally, we're going to go on a little nursery road trip and see if I can find myself another Arbutus marina strawberry tree. Because if you've watched a few of my videos recently, you'll know I'm strongly considering moving to either northeastern California or northern Nevada. And if that happens, well, I want to take some strawberry trees with me. Granted, it's colder there. They are hardy down to zone 7, which we'll get into, but I might have to protect them a little in the winter, but I'm willing to do that because I just love this tree so much. So without further ado, let's go take a look at my strawberry trees and see how they're doing. Well, this is what my Arbutus marina strawberry tree looks like now. It's a few years old, and you can tell it definitely has grown. It's filled out. I have kept it pruned kind of short. I mean, it's a slow-growing tree anyway, but I've been concentrating on letting it fill out and develop side branches. Now, these are the blossoms of the strawberry tree. They hang like little chandeliers. And some years, the birds have just taken them all. And sometimes, if they bloom at just the wrong moment around here, we'll get a windstorm and it will blow off a lot of the blossoms. But generally speaking, this is a tree that fruits kind of year-round, in the sense that while it is putting out new blossoms, it's still ripening its fruit from the previous cycle. Here are some strawberry balls still left on the tree. I am watching them carefully. I have about 24 of them, and I want to snag them before the birds get them so I can make some jam. But yes, this tree is looking good, and I'm really pleased with its growth. Despite being a slow-growing tree, it's filling out nicely, and it's really healthy. You can tell from the green leaves and the amount of blossoms it has. And if you look right here, you'll see that there's new growth coming out at the top of the branch here. And I say it does it twice a year, spring and fall. It sends out new growth. Now I do have another strawberry tree. Now the other tree is an Arbutus unedo, and it has slightly different bark, and it grows a slight bit faster than the Arbutus marina. Let's go take a look at it. Now this strawberry tree, my Arbutus unedo, is about 2 feet taller than my Arbutus marina. It's also a few years older. As you can see, there are many fruits on it in different stages of development, from green to dark orange. None of them are yet at the dark red stage. For some reason, perhaps because it's a little thicker and bushier, not sure why, the birds left this one alone a little more than they did the younger tree. One thing I've noticed about this tree is that it is about 1.5 to 2 months behind the other tree in when it sets its blooms. So while the Arbutus marina blooms its chandelier-like blooms in October and November, this tree, the Arbutus unedo, sends its blooms out when its fruits are pretty much done ripening in December and January. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm very glad to have these trees because they're so pretty and so useful. Now you can see the difference between the Arbutus unedo and the Arbutus marina when you look at its trunk. They both have peeling trunks, which are quite aesthetically pleasing, I think, especially as they get bigger. And if you were to, say, prune off the lower branches to get a better view of the trunk, I am not planning to do that at this point, though I might change my mind. But the trunk of the Arbutus marina has a red peeling trunk. Let's go look at it again. So there is the peeling trunk of the Arbutus marina. And as the trunk gets thicker, it becomes more and more pleasing to look at as well. And at that point, I might trim off some of the lower branches, but again, I'm not sure. And at this point, I'm definitely concentrating on filling the tree out and getting it healthy so it can produce lots of fruit. But in addition to making jam or smoothies with the fruit that has a perfect texture for those things, the main thing I want to do with this tree is use its leaves, because strawberry tree leaves make a wonderful medicinal herbal tea. The tea is great for stomach issues of all kinds, which I have kind of a bothersome stomach, so it's definitely helped me in that regard. In addition, it is fabulous for helping with joint pain and swelling, such as arthritis and rheumatism brings on. And I definitely have felt the benefit from drinking this savory tea, unless you add some, say, mint to it, then it becomes anything but savory, but altogether delicious and helpful tea. Now, as I mentioned, the Arbutus unedo does blossom and start its fruiting process a month or two after the Arbutus marina. And the other main difference between the two trees is that the Arbutus unedo's blossoms are white with just a very faint tinge of pink, whereas the Arbutus marina, as you saw when I showed you mine, has very deep, dark pink blossoms. Now, the bark does look quite a bit different as well, with a grayish brown trunk on the Arbutus unedo. However, as it gets older and starts to peel more, it does reveal a somewhat red bark, just not as dark cinnamon red as the Arbutus marina bark, which I happen to absolutely love. In most ways, though, the Arbutus unedo and the Arbutus marina, as well as all the other varieties of Arbutus trees, of which there are many, are quite similar. They're all very drought tolerant. They all can handle soils of all types, whether clay, sandy, loamy, some combination thereof. They all do not like to be waterlogged. They all prefer a very sunny location. They don't need to be watered very often after they're established. They like kind of an infrequent deep watering, and that's all. They're good. Their range and climate is a U.S. zone 7 up to 9 or 10. If you're going to go colder than that, you're going to have to bring them in, so they would need to be portable, or you're going to have to cover them like I do with some of my citrus, a heat blanket or something to protect them from anything below, say, a -5°F. Now, the main thing that's absolutely necessary when growing this tree is to give it really good drainage. That's just super important and can't be stressed enough. But there are no pests, really. Occasionally, I've heard it can get some aphids, but just release some ladybugs and there you go. I've never had an issue with that at all, and no one I know has either. As far as diseases go, the only one I've ever heard of, and I haven't experienced it either, is a little bit of black spot, which is a fungal disease that happens when the tree is too humid and crowded in some of its lower branches. So you want to have some good air circulation going on. It can definitely have a lot of side branches. It can be really multi-trunked, but you want some airflow in there too, especially if you live in a more humid environment. Now, is fertilizer necessary? Nope, it's really not. In fact, I don't ever fertilize my trees and they're doing great. Most people don't. If you want to fertilize them though, or if they look like they're a little nutritionally stressed, highly unlikely, but if so, give them some compost tea that you make at home from chop and drop you've done in your own garden. That is the best way to go. Other ways the Arbutus unedo and Arbutus marina and other varieties of arbutus trees are similar is that they're all evergreen. They all take 4 to 5 years before they start fruiting. They're all self-pollinating. You might read some things somewhere that say that Arbutus unedo needs to have a cross-pollinator or a second tree. That is actually not true. However, like many other fruit trees, having a second tree does help in fruit production. The strawberry tree is actually one of the world's leading wild fruit producers, and that's really a good thing. In the past, native peoples around the world have used the strawberry tree fruit and the leaves, even the bark, widely for many medicinal purposes, which I'll talk about in another video, but mainly they're super, super high in antioxidants, which help prevent so many diseases and just slow down the whole aging process. But also anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antibacterial. Yeah. So like I said, we'll get into that in another video. Now, what about pruning? People have asked me a lot about that. Well, remember, the arbutus trees are slow growing, very slow growing. So you really don't need to do much pruning. Of course, if there's any dead branches, prune them out. But otherwise, you would only want to prune in a couple of instances. One, if you were trying to create what looked like a normal tree, a standard tree, well, you would start pruning the lower branches off and creating a long trunk before letting the top, bush out like a standard tree. I really personally don't want to do that, but that is an option. I would let your tree get well established before you attempt to do this though. Another thing you can do is prune at the growing tips if you're trying to shape the tree. Let's say you have a lot more branches on one side than another. Or if you want the tree to bush out more, you could head it back on one of those growing tips to let it bud out new branches there. As always, when pruning, make sure that your pruners are very clean, sanitize them with alcohol, and you'll be set. Now, one last note before we head off to the nursery, and that is, what about the fruit? I've heard it's not any good. I've heard that whole thing that unedo means I only wanted one because it wasn't good. Well, we don't actually know what that whole I only want one meant, but let's put that aside. What the fruit actually tastes like, if you have it when it's ripe, is somewhat the texture of a pear. That sandy nature of a pear. The outside's a little bit, I don't want to say gritty because that has a negative connotation, but a little bit that way on the outside. As soon as your tongue sinks into the flesh, it has that sandy pear nature. And the taste? Well, I think it tastes like a combination of nectarine and guava. That's my opinion. Everybody has their own, but I do like it. However, to me, the leaves are where it's at. What a great tea. Let's go see if I can find myself another Arbutus marina. Let's go on a little trip to a nursery. Well, it turns out the nursery doesn't have as many of these as they told me on the phone that they did. This one is an Arbutus marina, like the one I've been showing you. There's that telltale red peeling bark. It is about the same height as mine if you took off the 15-gallon container it's in. It was in the ground, but it is fuller. It's older than mine, and so it is fuller, but mine will be there pretty soon. Probably in another 2 years mine will be this full. And look at that price. So that is way more than I'm willing to pay. I got mine for, I think they were 35 or 40. They were in 5-gallon containers, but it only took 3 years for them to get almost this size, so there's no need to pay that kind of money. Sorry for all the noise. This part of the nursery is right next to the highway. Now they have 3 Arbutus marinas that are standards, meaning they have pruned them to look like a tree. They've taken off all the lower branches. The other ones are called multi-trunk for obvious reasons, and you're usually grown more as a bush. I've seen in some really nice botanical gardens some 30-foot Arbutus marinas and Arbutus unedos that were kept as multi-trunk. I'd guess it just takes them longer to get there. So this one does have blossoms on it, unlike the multi-trunk. It looks like it's a bit behind my tree in blossoming. Here's another standard Arbutus marina. Including the pot height, it's probably about 8 feet tall. And the other one, similar, about 8 feet. Looks like they're in 20 or 25-gallon containers. Hard to tell. I'm not good at that stuff once they change the diameter. But these standard ones are 195. I wouldn't want a standard one. I mean, it's true, it exposes the bark, but you're not going to be able to reach most of the fruit. If you don't like the fruit, that wouldn't matter, but it matters to me. Oh, it's pouring rain, guys. But I braved the storm so I could come out and show you. I did find a strawberry tree. Not this one. This is the one I've already got growing, but I found an Arbutus marina. Take a look. Right now I have it propped up with various things because I don't want it to blow over in this windstorm, but it's very healthy. It actually has a few blossoms on it, and it's about the same height as my Arbutus marina once I get it out of the pot it's in and get it in the ground. So I'm very, very pleased. I had to look over that nursery quite a while, 2, 3, 4 times I think, before I finally found this 5-gallon Arbutus marina. And really, it should have already been transplanted up a size to a 10 or 15 gallon. So yeah, I got it for only $45. So happy with this. So yes, I did find my Arbutus marina. I'm really happy about that. Now, before we go, I wanted to address the issue of whether or not you can propagate the strawberry tree through seeds or cuttings. Well, technically, you can do this either of those two ways, but it isn't easy. Rather, it's easy to do, but it's not easy as far as success goes. So the germination rate of the seeds is a pretty good 80%, but it's only a 30 or 40% success rate as far as do they actually grow to be a healthy, thriving tree? No, they usually peter out pretty quickly. But 30 to 40% is still doable. And you can try growing them from seeds. I know I'm going to experiment with it just for fun. I think it might be a better shot at growing them if you take a cutting. Like a lot of other cuttings, you'd want to do it with semi-hardwood, so it's a little woody but not too old. You're going to strip down all the leaves except the top 2, and you're going to plant that cutting, which would be 6 to 10 inches in length, in either soil or sand. Keep it protected, keep it damp, not waterlogged, and it takes months and months to grow roots. Lots of experimentation required on this from what I've read. I haven't done it yet, but I do intend to do it this year, and I will let you know about my progress. If any of you have done it, be sure to comment and let me know. So thanks for joining me today, everyone. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you learned something, and I especially hope that you'll try growing a strawberry tree yourself. It's so worth it. See you next time, and remember, you can create the life you want, so why not start right now?